Your brain has physically built a pathway for your most repeated sin. The harder you fight it with willpower alone, the more you activate it. Paul described this exact mechanism in Romans 7, 2,000 years before neuroscience had a name for it. What I want to show you is the biological reason willpower always loses, and the one practice Paul's own prescription maps onto exactly, that modern behavioral science now validates. You can start it this week. It's around 57 AD. Paul is in Corinth. He is writing a letter to the church in Rome. He has already written 6 chapters: law, grace, sin, justification, the death of the old life. And then he arrives at something he has to be honest about. He writes, "I do not do what I want, but I do the very thing I hate." He isn't venting, he's reporting. Paul was a Pharisee, the most disciplined class of people in the ancient world. They memorized the entire Torah by age 12. They structured every hour around obedience to the law. Jerusalem, decades before Corinth. This was Saul of Tarsus, age 12. He could recite every scroll on that rack without opening a single one. That man, with that discipline, still wrote Romans 7. If willpower could break a deeply wired pattern, Paul would have broken it. Which means Romans 7 isn't a confession of weakness, it's a data point. He identifies 3 simultaneous forces operating inside the same person at the same time: the law he wants to follow, the law he finds himself breaking, and the war between them. Modern neuroscience gives us the same 3-part structure, just with different names. Every time you repeat a behavior, your brain lays down a faster route for it. Neurons that fire together wire together. The pathway gets sheathed in myelin with each repetition, a coating that makes the signal travel faster and require less energy. The more you have done something, the lower the energy cost to do it again. Paul called this the members of my body warring against the law of my mind. The basal ganglia manages these automatic patterns, deep in the brain, operating beneath conscious awareness. It doesn't know your values. It doesn't know what you resolved this morning. It only knows the pattern you have given it. This is why willpower fails. Not because you are weak, because willpower is the wrong instrument for this problem. Willpower lives in the prefrontal cortex, the part of the brain that deliberates, reasons, and decides. The basal ganglia fires before your prefrontal cortex has even registered the cue. Paul wrote, "I do not understand my own actions." He is not confused about what he wants. He is describing the experience of a system that outran his awareness. By the time you notice you are in the pattern, you are already deep in the pattern. The cue fires. The craving activates. Willpower arrives late, already behind. Here is the part that changes everything. Paul did not tell you to try harder. He told you exactly what to do instead, and it maps almost word for word onto what behavioral scientists discovered in the last 30 years. But first, the part most people skip when they read Romans 7. Romans 7, verse 8. Sin, seizing an opportunity through the commandment, produced in me all kinds of covetousness. The commandment, the prohibition itself, made the desire stronger, not weaker. Modern neuroscience confirmed this in the 1990s. Wolfram Schultz, studying dopamine neurons in primates, found something unexpected. Dopamine does not fire at the moment of reward. It fires in anticipation of it. The craving is the reward. The desire itself is the dopamine signal. The more you have repeated the behavior, the stronger the anticipation signal becomes. The forbidden thing becomes more desired precisely because it is forbidden. Paul saw this clearly. He was not describing a spiritual mystery. He was describing a dopamine anticipation loop. 5 chapters after Romans 7, Paul gives the prescription. Romans 12, verse 2. Be transformed by the renewal of your mind. The Greek word Paul uses for renewal is anakainosis, a building process, active, ongoing, structural, not a feeling, not feel differently about sin, not want it less. Renew the pathway. Modern behavioral science. You cannot erase a neural pathway. The groove stays. But you can build a competing pathway that wins by default, if you build it stronger. The mechanism? Same cue. Different deliberate behavior. Repeated. Paul's language for this, putting off the old self and putting on the new self. Not metaphor, a behavioral protocol. Daily. Repeated. Cue triggered. Here is what this looks like in practice. You are not fighting the sin. You are finding the cue. Not the behavior, the moment before it, the emotion, the environment, the time of day. That cue is the activation point. That is where the basal ganglia fires. Place the substitute at that exact point. The deliberate, different behavior triggered by the same cue every time. For you, the cue might look like this. Evening. The day's work done. The phone within reach. The anticipation signal fires before the hand moves. The substitute doesn't have to be righteous. It has to be deliberate. Same cue, different response. Every time. Not once, not when you feel ready. Every time the cue fires. Paul called this presenting your members as instruments of righteousness. Not an act of will, an act of placement. You place the behavior where the cue lands, and you do it again. Romans 7 is not a confession of failure. It is a diagnostic document, the most precise self-report of neural habit conflict ever written. And Romans 8, there is therefore now no condemnation, is not relief from guilt. It is the announcement of a different operating system. Not willpower, not trying harder. One pathway at a time.